So now we're going to take a look at business districts, and this is what we classify as commercial use. The business district standards are fairly strict. They do prevent, I shouldn't say prevent, they do limit what you can do within a given zone based on the type of business. So let's take a look at what they have there. First of all, we're going to go down to the standards. And it basically says that if you're going to have a business district, that building, structure, or lot must conform with all the provisions set forth in this below. So the first one we come across is what's called J business. That's a transitional business. And transitional means this is the first type of business that we want to have next to a residential property. So you don't want to have a residential property and right next to it have auto body repair. Okay, that doesn't necessarily fit with the character of what Brookhaven wants to do. Could it have happened in the past? Yes, but going forward, we don't want to let that happen in the future. So this talks about the different types of businesses we'd want to see in that J business, and it explains the why of why they're doing it a certain way. It also talks about that if you're going to do any work in a J business district, there's a design manual that you must follow. And this is basically the architectural elements that they want to see on all commercial businesses. It talks about some of the lighting standards, the colors, the signage. If you ever go and look at how commercial businesses are, like say strip malls, you notice that they tend to look very similar in the signage and lighting. There's a reason for that. Okay, there's a manual that Brookhaven has put out, and they want everyone to follow that. So what can you do in a J business district? And this is a very important to see all different uses. You can put up, first is, in a J business district, no building or structure shall be occupied and no building part thereof altered except for the following purposes. So you can only do what's listed. It's only what's permitted, not nothing else. You're allowed to have art galleries, art studios, community centers, daycare facilities, exhibit halls, florists, mixed-use buildings, excluding those with retail operations. No selling stuff. Museums, non-degree granting instruction programs, except manufacturer and driver training. So we're looking at things like karate schools, Kumon tutoring center, things along that line. Nonprofit cultural centers, offices, open farming, personal service shops, barber shops, nail salons, places of worship, parish house or rectories, single family and two family dwellings, standalone farm stands, and vet hospitals. So that's considered as of right what you can do. If you get a planning board special permit, which is different than a town board special permit, but planning board special permit, you can do a bank, but no drive-through facility. You can have a bed and breakfast, you can have a lodge, and you can do undertaking establishment. That's a funeral home. You can have accessory uses to all the uses above, and those accessory uses have to be customary to what you'd have as the regular business. All right, so customary accessory office, retail, sales, outdoor display, and outdoor seating and cafes shall be permitted as an accessory to art galleries, art studios, museums, and not-for-profit cultural centers. One thing that always jumps out at me, and I don't know if you noticed it, besides not selling anything, it doesn't talk about restaurants. There's no restaurants permitted in J business districts unless it's attached to a museum or attached to a art studio, art gallery. Fences, this is the same fence restriction we have in the residential about keeping 6-foot fence in the back, 4-foot everywhere else. And if you want, there's always, I don't know why this fascinates me, but if you want to have barbed wire on your property, you need a special permit for that. You're also allowed to have detached sheds, greenhouses, and fuel cell. Okay, so if you want to put a fuel cell, and that's only recently been permitted as of last year, you can do so, but it's only for your own use. You cannot be a power generator providing fuel electricity to other people. So what's prohibited? Everything we didn't say that is permitted is prohibited. Now we get to the dimensional requirements. Okay. There used to be a table that shows all these dimensional requirements, but these things modify so often that they scrap the table, and you now have to go to the individual section of the code to see exactly what it is. So it works similar to what we saw in residential. The minimum lot area is 15,000 square feet, so nothing smaller than a 15,000 square foot lot. The minimum road frontage is 100 feet wide. The setbacks, your front yard setback is 40 feet. The side yard setback is 10 feet. So you have to have 10 feet between the building and your property line. And the rear yard, you have to have at least 40 feet as well. Now with the commercial structures, that setback can go right through the parking lot. So this is just the distance to your, to your building. It's not the distance to your parking lot. Maximum height permitted is 35.5 or 2.5 stories. And then we have the FAR, floor area ratio. This is a very important number, okay? For commercial businesses and also industrial, we always talk about what the FAR is, and this is a calculation of what the size of the building is relative to the size of the property. So the FAR is 20%. So if you were to have a, let's just use an example, 15,000 square foot building, you multiply that by 0.2, and that would be a 3,000 square foot building, floor to area ratio. That is measured as the outside of the building, not the interior. So you can't subtract out thickness of walls and get fancy with your calculations. I've tried it, it doesn't work. It also counts for multi-story buildings. So if you have a 3,000 square foot, 2-story building, that means it's 1,500 square feet on the first floor, 1,500 square feet on the second floor, or some variation of that. But the total 3,000 square feet comes from both floors. And if you have an unenclosed front porch, like a large overhang, that does not have to be included in the calculations. Let's move on to the J Business 2. This is general business, probably one of the more common zones in the town of Brookhaven. So what can you do there? Art galleries, this is as of right. Banks without accessory drive-through, bowling alleys, catering halls, commercial centers, daycare facilities, delis, dry cleaners, exhibit halls, health clubs, laundromats, live performance, community theater, movie theater, community, and just we'll get this later. The reason they write it that way is it's a very specific definition of what a community movie theater is rather than a regional movie theater. It has to do with the size and number of seats. Same thing with commercial center. Okay, there's very specific requirements. The language in here is very specific. Museums, non-degree granting schools, nursery or garden center, office, personal service shops, pharmacy without accessory drive-through, places of worship, retail sales. Okay, so now we start selling stuff. Shops and stores for the retail of consumer merchandise and service. Shops for custom work and making articles be sold on the premises. A takeout restaurant. So now takeout restaurants are different than regular restaurants. Again, it goes back to the definitions, and we'll take a look at those right after we finish up J2. Undertaking establishments and vets. So all those are your as of right. By special permit, town board special permit, not planning board, we'll get to those next. Town board, they will let you in a J2 become a large commercial retailer or a two-family dwelling. And this is how we get that transitional business where we start seeing residential properties transitioning between the commercial and purely residential. We allow two-family residence, which is mostly going to be definitely a rentable property. That can be something that helps transition between that commercial and purely residential zone. Planning board will allow you by special permit, and special permits are revocable, which is important to remember. They do have to be renewed. Social halls, automobile parking, bar, tavern, and nightclub, pool halls, colleges, but no dorms. All right, but it goes back. You also need 75 acres of land. Lodges, major restaurant without drive-through facility. Again, definition of major we'll get into. Motor vehicle restaurant, retail, motor vehicle rentals, public or private schools, but no dorms. A regular restaurant, and this one you got to be careful with. With restaurants, these are by special permit, which means you could lose your permit if you don't follow the town rules. So it's a lot of money to invest for something that may get revoked if you don't follow the rules. Single family dwellings, indoor smoking establishments, and then with some redevelopment issues, which we don't need to worry about. Accessory uses, outdoor displays, and fuel cells. Okay, town board permits for accessory use can be a regional movie theater, can be an accessory to a commercial center. So if you have, let's say, a large mall with a movie theater attached to it, I'm thinking there's was it South Shore Mall in Bayshore? I remember growing up, that was where I used to go to movies. There used to be, I don't even know if there's a movie theater in there still, but there was when I was a kid. And motor vehicle fueling as an accessory to a major retailer. So think of like gas stations at Costco. Planning board special permits for accessory. Drive-through facilities as an accessory to a bank or pharmacy. So as of right, you can put the bank there, but if you want to drive through, you have to get a special permit for your accessory use. Major restaurants as part of a commercial center, mega laundromat, which is different than a regular laundromat, outdoor overnight parking, outdoor displays, and outdoor seating for restaurants and takeout restaurants. Let's go into your dimensional criteria. Minimum lot area is 15,000 square feet. Now, you're probably thinking there's no way I'm going to be able to put a mall on a 15,000 square foot property, or what about my 75 acres for a college? You're right, you can't. But if you want to do something smaller, a J2 lot can be subdivided as low as 15,000 square feet. It can be more, it can be 30 acres, but you can't have less than 15,000 square feet. If you want to have a bank or pharmacy with a drive-through or a major restaurant without a drive-through facility, then you need to have 65,000 square feet of land. So a little bit over, is that 65,000 divided by 4, 3, 5, 60, almost 1.5 acres. It's 1.49 acres. And if you want to have a commercial center, 5 acre minimum. Okay, so think about you want to put them all in, minimum 5 acres. Your road frontage. Okay, minimum road frontage is 100 feet. If you have a bank or pharmacy, it's got to be 100 feet, 150 foot minimum. If you have a large commercial center, a commercial center is only 300 feet wide, and regional movie theaters must also be 300 feet wide. Your setbacks. All your front yard setback would be 25 feet, except for commercial centers and regional movie theaters, 100 foot. Side yards. 10-foot side yard setbacks, except for banks and pharmacies and major restaurants, that's 25 feet. And minimum required setbacks for commercial centers is 50 feet. On your rear yard setback, 25 feet on the rear yard, except for banks and pharmacies with drive-through or major restaurant without a drive-through, that's 40 feet. And then minimum required area for commercial centers or regional movie theaters is 75 feet. So some of you may be thinking, why do they keep picking on the banks and pharmacies and major restaurants without drive-through? Why do they put special requirements on those? It goes back to development. Years ago, there was an influx of restaurants that were being put up, and also banks and pharmacies with drive-throughs. And when the town was looking at them with how they affect the neighboring properties, they decided we need to change these. So it's another way of restricting where they get placed and what you can do on a site. So how do you know what is required for your particular project? Because some of you may be feeling a little bit overwhelmed at all the information that's here. You're right, it is a little bit overwhelming, but here's the good thing. When you're doing this for a living, when you're doing this professionally, you're doing it day in, day out. You get used to this. Right now, it's just being exposed to it to say, yeah, I know that when I have a building, I don't care what the use is, but I have a building, I do have to have a setback on the front, side, and rear yards. I need to go and read in the code what that is and figure it out. And then I also need to know that if I have a certain type of property, say J2, I need to read the entire J2 code. It's only 2 or 3 pages, and find out exactly what I can and can't do. No one expects you to have the zoning code memorized, because it does change. You are expected, though, to be able to recognize what type of property you have and know to be able to go into the code and figure this out. All right, back to floor area ratio. The maximum floor area ratio is 35% in a J2 business. However, and this is why you have to read the full part of the code, the maximum for a commercial center is 20%. And if you're doing a commercial center with a large commercial retailer, there's a lot of little extras in here, then it's 16%. So why are they doing this? Again, it goes down to restriction. Brookhaven is trying to keep Brookhaven looking a little bit green in terms of landscaping. They don't want this turning into start looking like Queens, where we have buildings going from lot line to lot line. They want you to be able to drive up to a commercial property, have landscaping throughout the parking lot, have landscaping between the road and the parking lot. And they don't want the building to be the entire piece of property. They want to have extra open space around there. So that's how they make those restrictions. They put maximum FARs on all the properties. Now, what's this green building incentive here? Well, the town realizes that green building is good. And what they allow us to do is that if you were designing a green building, they will let you increase your floor area ratio 1% for every LEED standard that's achieved. So if you're a silver, you can go from 16% up to 17%. If you are going for gold, you get 19%. So it now is an incentive for a developer to put a green building in, because they can make their property 3% larger in size. 3% larger in size means you can now charge more rent, 3% more rent a year, because there's more area. That's a very good incentive to businesses to go with LEED. But of course, there's always a little catch to it. You don't know what you're certified until after it's built. So you may design a platinum building. Okay, once you build it, it may not actually get a platinum rating. So this has not come up yet, but what happens when you design let's just say a large commercial center to be a platinum certified project? You add an extra 4% to the size of the building. Does Brookhaven come in and condemn 4% of the land or the building? It's an interesting legal question. Okay, maximum heights on there, 35, 2.5 stories. You're going to see very common throughout the rest of all of the code. Special permits. These are always the interesting sections. So by special permit in a J2 zone, you are allowed to have a convenience store. And the town does not like convenience stores. The town doesn't like a lot. It's a very grumpy town. They don't want convenience stores. And one of the things that they're looking at is that convenience stores, specifically around gas stations, we had a lot of gas stations that converted over to convenience stores and got rid of their mechanical bays. And just the number of convenience stores that popped up. And we're talking about 7-Elevens and basically 7-Elevens are the big ones. They don't want those in the business districts. They'd rather see you going to smaller mom and pop shops like delis and things like that. So it's really kind of a business decision, and it does kind of change the look of a neighborhood. When a 7-Eleven comes in, it's not always the best look. Great coffee, don't get me wrong, but it's not the best look for a neighborhood. Okay, so what they've done is they made very restrictive requirements for convenience stores, and they can't call out a specific brand of convenience store because that would be discriminatory, so they kind of blanket it to everybody. So here's what you have to provide. One off-street truck loading space that is a minimum of 12 feet wide and 40 feet long has to be required. They do not want to have the Budweiser truck parked in the street offloading its content, or parked in the middle of the parking lot blocking up spaces. You actually have to have a designated spot on your site plan for them to use. All parking aisles must be at least 24 feet wide. You must have a dumpster enclosure for the dumpster, and 2 dumpsters must be provided, one for garbage, one for cardboard recycling, unless you can create a cardboard recycling room inside the building. You have buffers and plantings that have to be done in accordance with section 85-50B, subsection 2, subsection B. This is very specific planting for convenience stores. We'll take a look at that in landscaping later on. And then we have rear setbacks of 25 feet. You must have a minimum of a 6-foot high solid, opaque, that means you can't see through it, fence along any property line adjacent to a residential district or use. Outdoor sales, storage, and display of goods shall be prohibited. So if you pass a 7-Eleven and you see that stack of firewood, or what else they usually have, windshield wiper fluid, any of that stuff stacked outside the building, that's not allowed. Extra signs on the outside of the building, not permitted. No neon lights are permitted, so get rid of all the beer signs. Those you can't have. We must have waste receptacles for the customers, and they must be maintained on site. And you have to have a written maintenance plan provided by management for the litter and general upkeep of the premises. What they've had problems with in the past, and that's why they now require it in the future, is 7-Elevens tend to be hangouts, where you may get, I don't know, a bunch of kids riding their bikes, getting Slurpees, and they'll just hang out in front of a 7-Eleven. You might have been that kid one day, and then instead of throwing your container in the garbage, you just throw it on the ground. That garbage blows around, so the town basically put their foot down and said, okay, you now need to give us a written document that shows how this is going to be dealt with, and you got to provide plenty of garbage cans for everybody to use. The required lot size is a big one. The minimum lot size shall be 1 acre. Okay, unless the planning board in its discretion upon a finding of compliance with certain criteria approves a site of not less than 1/2 acre. So it's got to be an acre unless the planning board says we'll let you get a little bit less. But if you go to a 1/2 acre site, you cannot get any deliveries by tractor trailer. So all the stuff that you're selling inside that convenience store must be delivered by smaller truck. You have to provide area traffic circulation. That's got to be adequate as determined by the planning board. And then other conditions that the board determines will protect neighboring properties and enhance community character, including but not limited to architectural design enhancements there too. So now the planning board says, we'll give you permission to build it on a 1/2 acre site, but if we determine that there's something that you should do to protect the neighboring properties or enhance the community character, you have to do it. That may mean making your 7-Eleven look like a different type of structure than it is. So these are all things you would be required. Your other option is don't build it there. And by doing that, you lose out on that business. Okay. Shopping centers and pad sites. Okay, pad sites are those additional, if you have a shopping center and then you have a standalone building for, say, like a Checkers, or what else? Sometimes you'll have banks, little bank kiosks in the middle of a parking lot. Those could be pad sites. It could be even standalone restaurants or on a large commercial center. So they have requirements for those. I'm not going to read through these with you. You can read them on your own. Large commercial retailers, they have certain requirements. 35% of the site must be maintained as natural and undisturbed. Major restaurants have specific requirements, setbacks. Okay, read through that. Motor vehicle and indoor smoking establishments. These are all specific extra requirements that are thrown on top if you want to get a special permit. Overnight parking, outdoor displays, outdoor seating. Okay, so now before we go into J4, I want to jump back into the definitions. Because there's very different uses. That's going to be all the way back. So let's go back to zoning. Get there a different way. Section 85. Here we go, definitions. All right, this is something you definitely should read through. Okay, it's a little long, but it's worth understanding the difference. We're going to key in on a couple specific things. Accessory apartment. So that says it's a dwelling unit which is subordinate to a permitted principal one-family residence in terms of size, location, appearance, and located within the principal structure. That's how they define that. But I want to take a look at a lot of adult uses here. Let's take a look at what we hit first. I'll know it when I see it. Commercial centers. Okay. So a commercial center, retail use which exceeds gross floor area of 100,000 square feet and occupies a site of 5 or more acres. So if you're less than 100,000 square feet, you're not considered to be a commercial center. Okay. Commercial laundry, a building or part of a building that is used for laundering clothes linens, including dyeing, washing, starching, and ironing. That's a little bit different than a mega laundromat, which we're going to get to. Okay, here's how we define convenience stores. Sells food, beverage, prepackaged within the establishment, newspapers, magazines, sundries of convenience nature. It's open 7 days a week and at least 12 hours a day. Notice it doesn't say 11. Let's see, daycare facility, density, depot, Dude Ranch. I didn't know we had those. Oh, Duck Ranch. I'm sorry, my eyes. Single family residence. Okay, this is how they define a single family residence. One electric meter, one gas meter. They define the family. This is, that's a sticky one. Okay. The reason they define it, they actually have to define what a family is they're looking at areas like group homes and sober homes. Brookhaven had an influx of group homes being generated years ago when the market prices were down, and it detracts from the value of a neighborhood. So they've put prohibitions on where and how they're put in place, and one of the ways they could do that was by defining what a family from a single family or two family house is, and using that as the vehicle for getting the code passed. It's a tricky thing because you want to make the code restrictive, but you can't make it discriminatory. And the purpose of zoning code is also to protect the value of the properties as they are. All right, let's see. So we have to get into, like I said, a lot of definitions here. Attached and detached garages. Okay, they define how we calculate gross floor area. It's always done as outside to outside, outside wall to outside wall. Okay, so we had commercial center, but then we have large commercial retailer. What's the difference? A retail use within a commercial center where the tenant space exceeds 125,000 square feet. That's your big box stores. That's considered to be a large commercial retailer. Here we go. Laundromats. Laundromats are a building which washes and dries clothes, okay, for retail customers. You're a mega laundromat if you have a total of 50 double loading machines, 5,000 square feet of interior space, or you generate more than 30,000 gallons of wastewater per day. So it's any of these turns you into a mega laundromat. Remember, you can't even get the permits to become a laundromat unless you can prove that you can take all that wastewater and treat it on site to the health department. So the municipalities, the town and the health department, do work hand in hand. So let's now get into restaurants, which are coming up. A lot of stuff on motor vehicles. Movie theaters, we're going to hit that first. A community movie theater has less than 1,500 seats, and a regional movie theater has more than 1,500 seats. That's the difference between them. So depending on what you have, it's going to give you different setback requirements that you have to work with. We're almost there. Restaurants. Okay. For a regular restaurant, Okay, you sell food, desserts, or beverages for immediate consumption with a total gross floor area of between 2,001 and 4,999 square feet, and or you have between 33 and 199 seats, no drive-through. That's considered to be a restaurant. A major restaurant would be more than 5,000 square feet or more and 200 seats or more, or if you have a drive-through service. So let's take Taco Bell, favorite restaurant. If you go into a Taco Bell, you can generally seat, let's just say 30 people in there, maybe 30, maybe 40 people. So you would, under that definition, it's definitely between 2,000 and 5,000 square feet. You'd fall under a definition of being a regular restaurant. But if you have a drive-through service, now you're considered a major restaurant, which kicks you into different setbacks. So when you're working with your clients who are going to hire you to design their structures for them, you have to talk them through and say, what do you want out of this? How many seats do you want? Do you want drive-through or no drive-through? Because it will change what you're classified as, and that will change what you can do on your site plan. And takeout restaurants, this would be a total gross floor area of 2,000 square feet or less, not more than 32 seats, and without drive-through service. Okay, so that's considered to be a takeout restaurant. So there's very specific definitions here. So take a look through here, a lot of interesting stuff in the definitions. And when you're not sure of what the actual meaning of something is, go back to your definitions, read through it, and that'll help you decide what has to be, what you have to do in a particular situation. So this is a good time for you to go outside, take a quick break. It's nice and sunny out this morning. Go get some fresh air, come back, and we're going to look at the next J Business District.